to order. It's 6 o'clock on August 24th, 2021. This first meeting is a workshop for a review of the timeline for the hiring of a superintendent. What we'll do is start with the flag salute. Stacy?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get too far in, Mr. Cassiopo, the board president, could not make it tonight, so I'm filling in for him just for tonight. What I'd like to start with is the timeline. I think everybody should have a copy of the timeline that Mr. Cassiopo had put together. And what I thought we'd start with is to kind of go through that timeline and discuss it, see if there's anything that we need to change, any of the timeline, any discussion that we want to add anything to it. And if everybody had a chance to review that? Okay. If you look at it goes from the top down, from the time we would like to hire and have the new superintendent on board, down to the bottom, it was how we're going to start the process. What we want to discuss tonight is how we want to go from here. How are we going to do this? Are we going to have an in-house search for a candidate? Are we going to open it up to outside candidates? I think we need to make that determination. And then how do we go from there? I have a couple ideas on this, but I wanted you guys to go through it, give me any feedback on this so I can make notes, and then we can make any changes that we need to. So Stacy.
So you want to start with the timeline?
Yes, let's start with the timeline.
So Jose, not to put you on the spot, but since you work in the realm of employment, when are people looking to change jobs, especially in the superintendent-wise?
Thank you for the question. This is Trustee Wilkie, Jose Delphin for the record. Pretty much any time of the year is when superintendent searches can happen. I've seen them throughout the year, but mostly they start for the incoming school year, usually around fall. So we're not that far off with regard to timelines. And typically, as the timeline is stated and drafted in the board agenda, that's a pretty fair timeline. It's not out of the ordinary.
Do you think, though, that having them start in the transition on April 30th, if they're already employed as a superintendent somewhere?
I think that's going to be a case-by-case basis, Mrs. Wilkie. If you're looking for a national search, you could run up against a timeline hiccup with regard to when they're released from their own district to be able to make that transition. And I think that can be worked out in the details as you get to that final decision. Sure.
Follow-up question with that, with the timeline for the advertisement period being 4 weeks, is that sufficient? Or should we look at 6 weeks, 8 weeks? I'm not sure. I mean, maybe we do 4 and adjust if we don't have suitable applicants.
That's a great question. It really depends, again, on what Trustee Varner had opened up with. If you're doing a regional, let's just say Nevada, then I think a shorter timeline for the application turn-in is appropriate. But if you're doing a more out-of-state national search, then you're looking easily 8 weeks.
Don, do you have any thoughts?
You had asked the question about, I definitely think we should look internal first. I think hopefully we have some good candidates internal. Also, I think an important thing with all of these type of jobs is you want to have somebody that wants to live in Carson City, wants to be here. has some sort of connection, hopefully.
Wrong mic. So we're gonna have to wait till they get all the fires out before we bring anyone out for interviews.
Yeah, not a good time now.
So I do have a suggestion for the board, just for process sake. I've had a chance to review it. I would strongly encourage the board to look at a third-party person to help with the search and do the screening for you, especially if you're going internal. It is a cleaner process, so it lessens any bias that could happen internally. Since, if we use our own online application system, it's usually through my department. So with a third party, they typically go through their system, and they're vetted through non-internal people in my department. So it provides a level of objectivity that is probably a more gold standard, if you will, with regard to these searches. Whether you're doing internal or external, I would still suggest that you have at least consult with Dr. Oliver. Thank you. And she may know some resources in the state that could do it for a lower cost than a national organization. And that way, you get to see all the applicants before anybody, and that's the way it should be. The superintendent is your only employee, so you want to make sure you're vetting that process as clean as possible and as objectively as possible. That's just my suggestion.
Just for the board's information, I know that Dr. Oliver with the Nevada Association of School Boards does provide help, assistance with superintendents searches. There is a fee for it. It varies depending on it. She's been a little busy with Elko lately. But there are, there's that. There are other services. We used a third-party service with NASB when we were looking to hire a new executive director. So there are that. Our state school board association is not as large as other state school board associations, but that is usually, they have, people on staff, and they have a whole department dedicated to assisting with superintendent searches. But that is something that NASB is looking to provide to the districts. I know she's, and I guess just for information's sake, she's assisted with 9 county, Dr. Oliver has assisted with 9 counties search, Lincoln County. She's working with Elko right now, a couple other, Eureka, and I'm not sure if Esmeralda, but I've heard of, she could give us more, but there are quite a few counties within the state that she has assisted with their superintendent searches. So just so that you have that information.
Do they prepare the job description and the job application?
Mr. Varner, thank you for the question. That is a long answer. I'm going to try to make it succinct. I think firstly, you want to define what you want in your superintendent.
Exactly.
And so once you define that, and typically you can do that either as a board or with the public in mind. And I've seen it both ways. I've seen the board just decide what the characteristics should be for the next superintendent. Most school districts, if they're doing a search, especially nationally, they're looking for feedback from the community, saying, what do you want in your superintendent? What are you looking for? What attributes? Especially for, the next generation of teachers and staff that we're going to have, as we have an aging staff leaving. So I would say that that's a defining parameter for doing a superintendent search, and then being able at least to get a little bit of stakeholder input, because they'll be in a community forum once the final decisions are made. So you want to get at least some minimal ideas of what maybe staff and the public are looking for.
Right. And before I go any further, I forgot to tell people that we are in a public building. Masks are required, and I look around the room and I see most everybody with a mask, if not everybody. So thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate your answer. I think there's some value to going with third party if there's funding available, and maybe that's a question for AJ. Do we have spare funds laying around? Okay.
It's coming out of my salary, it seems.
I don't care where it comes from if we haven't. No, seriously, but I know that it could be expensive. I think we heard one time $10,000 to $40,000. Yeah, from a third party.
You're also making an important investment in the future
Yes.
as well, as the new superintendent leads almost 1,000 staff and, almost 8,000 students. So I think a fair price is around 15,000-ish, if you will.
15,000.
That's not bad. I've seen it upwards. If you're Las Vegas or a big metropolitan area, you're easily spending 50 to 100K. And you're paying more too for a superintendent in a metro area. You're looking at over 200 to 300 grand, especially for Reno and Clark County. So it is a lot to ask for the next superintendent. So I think spending a little bit of money to get it the way you want it, I think is important.
Thank you. Lupe, you have any input?
So is there any hesitation about opening up statewide?
I personally don't have any hesitation to open it up out of district.
I agree that it should be open to district and we should look within district as well, but I don't have any concerns about opening it up statewide. I mean, we also have neighboring states that have the interesting thing nationwide is that the tenure of superintendents has decreased dramatically over the last few years. There's not many people that stay at the job for the number of years that Mr. Stokes has. So there is a much higher turnover. So that may change our search as well, just the number of people rotating in and out of that position.
I think that's going to take us a little getting used to because we've been so lucky to have superintendents that we've had for decades at a time. So what do you think about the January 4th for interviews, though? Is that too close to the holidays, the Christmas break?
Yeah, I think that can be pushed back a little bit, Mrs. Wilkie.
That was my question also,
Yeah.
Stacy, is I
That's-
thought that may be a little close to the holidays.
Yeah, most candidates are in the same boat. They're also dealing with, vacation and leave at that time. And if they're superintendents already, I'm sure they're a little busy with beginning of the school year and whatnot. And who knows with all the COVID stuff, what's going to happen. So I would say the further away from holidays as possible would be beneficial for all candidates. I do also want to add that, there are only 17 superintendencies in Nevada. I would think Carson City School District would be a very coveted superintendent position versus, I'm just a little biased, versus the rest of the 17.
If we decided to, if we couldn't afford to get a third party and we had to go in, have it, the job description and application completed in-house, could it be done? I don't know if you'd be a candidate or not, but we'd have to have somebody that wasn't in the running to prepare the announcement.
Mr. Brunner, I think we could work around that. I would, again, urge, if you can, to go to a third party. Yeah, it can be done. I know I've seen it done before in other districts. It's just how many questions you want to take from the public with regard to making sure you're as objective as possible. So I'm trying to protect you as well.
That does raise some concerns because Mr. Delphin is an employee under Mr. Stokes, and I know Mr. Stokes is going to be open and forthright, and I'm not concerned with him, but I do have concerns with how that may appear to some individuals. And I guess the other thought I'm wondering is if we're looking at wanting to get any public feedback on the characteristics of a superintendent, that probably needs to happen sometime towards, September before we, as we're developing maybe that's one of those early September meetings is
Yeah.
some questions that way.
So, Mrs. Crossman, just for some expediency, most districts do a survey to community and staff. And so that survey result will net and some taxonomy of the major qualities that people are looking for. Usually, the top three are trustworthiness, communication skills, high communication skills, obviously, and being able to lead in conflict. So that's usually the three things that most people look for in their superintendent. I would be not very surprised if, those come back as number 1, 2, 3, or 4. But you want at least your top 10 characteristics to match what you're looking for in the superintendent. And that's easily done through a survey. So you can start that really anytime. That's a matter of having Mr. Davis post a survey out for community and staff. You're going to get a different set of results from community as you will from staff. So just so you know, I've seen it done that way as well.
So that should be done as soon as possible, probably.
That'll give you some idea of what the public is looking for and what the staff is looking for, which could guide you again to your final decisions, or at least your final 3.
And that was one of the things that I have, is doing a quick questionnaire survey. Also, not just asking characteristics, but maybe what kind of culture they'd like to see in our schools. What kind of, what is the ideal school district look like? I mean, it looks different up here than it does, down there. And I think that that's really important to get the right fit. If we're looking at culture, might not depend on their characteristics.
So, Mrs. Wilkie, typically a third-party person would work with your president and maybe a couple assigned board members to develop those questions for the survey, so that you ask the kinds of questions that you want. And that's why you want somebody impartial who doesn't know the district, so they're able to ask those questions that maybe we haven't thought of. I've been here for 14 years. I can tell you I'm a little bit biased to Carson. So it's going to be tough for me to develop questions if I was trying to do it, and to help you, because I already have some implicit bias about Carson City. So hence why I think all those things need to go through a new person who isn't familiar with us and can be very objective and provide you really honest feedback along the way.
Would the third party develop minimum qualifications for the job, or would we, like I know that you could ask for a superintendent's credential, those type of things, certain type of education. Would the third party do that, or would that be up to the board?
It's a partnership between you and the board, you and the third party person, and that would mean, do you want somebody with at least a master's and a educational administration license from Nevada and can get one if they don't have one? Do you want somebody with a doctorate? Some districts say doctorate preferred, some don't care. Some want 10 years of experience with some kind of leadership in school, some want 5. It really depends on how you want to sculpt the job description, and it's a very fluid process. So it, again, depends on the flavor of the board and what you're looking for. And so I would say this is a great start to the workshop to define what you are looking for at the very minimum, and then getting some public feedback and staff feedback to look at the other essentials that maybe we're blind to.
One of the things I had on to discuss tonight is maybe the development of some questions for the superintendent interviews. Now, if we go with a outside party, does the board still develop those questions, or do we have input, or do they develop them?
With that third party. Plus, like Laurel said, we have other options too, we can get copies of those questions that they've asked at the other ones in the state. I have them for the national level. We have 7 other states. If you're interested in that, I can get those too. Everybody has their own job description, so we're not going to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
There's a lot of things out there that we can use to facilitate that. I think the important thing is having the third party, so that, like you said, the implicit bias. I mean, I can't help but think that this is the best city. I mean, I was born, raised my kids, raising my grandkids here. So for me not to have an implied bias would mean I don't have a heart. So I think it's real important also for transparency right now, so that the public feels that we're not being bulldozed or we're making decisions that have already been made, I think is important. And for staff to feel that way too, feel that, they have an input and how they want to see the direction be led too.
Mrs. Wilkie, just so you know, I checked our records. It's been almost 30 years since you've opened up the superintendency and not appointed. So this is actually brand new for all of us. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, that's,
So going back to the questions for the superintendent, Mr. Varner, typically anyone who's in the business of doing this full-time already has a bank of questions. And it's kind of like à la carte. You pick and choose, and then if you want to tweak some questions, definitely that's why you have that person working with you and the board to make sure you're targeting exactly what you are looking for.
yeah, I like that idea, but Laurel, you work with NASB quite a bit, and Dr. Oliver. How soon, if we decided to go outside, do you think they could start? I mean, do you have any idea?
We wanted to contract, or, enter
Contract,
an
yeah.
agreement with Dr. Oliver to
Yes.
serve as a third party. I don't know her schedule that well, so it would just be a matter of contacting her if that's something that we would like to do to get that. We could see when her availability is by our next meeting if we want to see if that's something. We're not taking action on this item
No,
now,
we're
so
not, no,
we can't make
right.
a decision to do that, but I can certainly get some more information on when she would be available. And if she has availability that meets kind of our timeline here, I can check into that.
Okay. The research I've done, it's usually a 4-month process, at least, is what it seems like is kind of a common timeline with the third party.
So if we adopt this timeline, are we stuck with it, or can it be flexible?
I think that this timeline is very flexible. I think this is for discussion only, so we could discuss it like we're doing now and make any suggested changes, tweak the timeline. This is not set in stone at all. This was just a suggestion that President Cassiopo put together for us to discuss.
Mr. Varner, Jose Delfin for the record, I would suggest to the board that everything is draft until you say it's a final. So let's say we're talking about just questions for the superintendent. I would suggest that for every board meeting, those are draft questions, or this is a draft schedule, if you will. And then when you finally come to consensus and make a decision on the questions or the survey or what have you, at every point of that, you can say, this is the final draft of the interview questions or the timeline or this process. So that way, everybody knows that it is fluidic until it's not.
Stacy?
That's pretty much all the questions I had for the actual timeline. Mr. Delphin answered the big one, if we're starting earlier or later. And I appreciate Mr. Cassiopo putting this together, because
Right.
it's real well done. I just don't want to be stuck with it in case, we only have 2 applicants, and so we don't need all these other little extra
Yeah.
steps, and we can't hire anybody till April.
No, it's fluid, it's very flexible. If we want to make changes, you can make the changes. I was wondering, one thing that we had in mind is maybe Jose, you could answer this, is having the board members put together some questions, send them in to Renee so we could, at our next board meeting, maybe review those questions. But if we're going to a third party, would that be a waste of time?
I'm sorry, I'm jumping in. I'm just thinking it might be a little duplicative because we probably are going to ask questions that they've already got stock questions. And maybe before we even get to formulating questions, we need to maybe each of us put up a list of what characteristics we're looking for, what we'd like to see in a superintendent, and put that survey out. So I guess maybe what I'm even wondering is I'd like to see a draft of the survey that we would send to staff and community before we do that. And some of that, we can answer that on our own as board members, but I'd also like to see what we're asking our community.
And maybe, again, Jose Delfin for the record, Mrs. Wilkie, if you've got that you all have that relationship with Dr. Oliver, that maybe she's got some survey questions in her database that she can at least get you all started and work from. So again, you're not reinventing the wheel, but maybe tweaking the wheel and making it a little bit more efficient. But you've got plenty of time, like Mr. Varner said. Typically, it's a 4 or 5 month process. So starting now in August gives you plenty of time to get a superintendent by July 1st. So again, being fluidic and flexible with, all of this process, but I would nail down whether or not you want a third party sooner than later,
Right.
because that affects the timeline severely.
So is that a decision we can make because this isn't
I don't
an
know,
action
that's
item?
For Mr. Ryan.
Mr. Ryan?
No.
No, you guys can't take any formal
thought-
action at all tonight. It's discussion only, but you can certainly compile your thoughts, share them with Jose or Renee, and if we need another action item that you want to actually adopt a formal plan or, adopt formal, whatever you want to do, we have to agendize it. But for tonight, it's just a discussion about the process. And for what it's worth, Jose, or Dr. Delphin's right, the timeline that you have are essentially just or President Casiopo's notes, and just food for thought for a discussion. So everything is completely flexible until you put it on an item and take action. And even then, you can take different action later if things change.
Just a thought I'm having with it, do we want to, which we couldn't do now because it'd be taking action, but putting it out there, do we want to have like a smaller committee, like not a quorum, but, like 2 people work together to kind of,
Like a superintendent's committee?
like a superintendent's committee to say, hey, here's what we found, here's the availability of this third party, here's the availability of this third party, here's how much they cost, so that could be presented to the board, so that they have something to, how would we go about setting something like that up, Brian?
So, Mr. Vice President, one of 2 ways. The district has used superintendent committees actually appointed by the superintendent for these types of purposes. It's a board-appointed committee. So, for example, if President Casiopo chooses to appoint 2 of you to a committee to look at this, the only caution there is that if the committee is able to trim or limit recommendations to the board, then that committee would be subject to the open meeting law. If it's just a matter of gathering information for presentation and action by the board, then it wouldn't be.
The other thought I had before we entered this discussion period is development of some kind of screening tool to screen the applicants to see if they do meet the minimum qualifications.
That's what the third party would do.
That's what I said before. If we go to a third party, we wouldn't need that, but if we don't, then that's something we got to give some thought to. A review process to see if they meet the minimum qualifications.
So, Dan, I have a question for you. How long would you need to put out a survey? What's the timeline? How much, like, from end to end, developing and getting it out to the stakeholders that we're looking at?
I was just checking with Ms. Fuse on whether or not we have the abilities. I'm sure we could track down the survey tool that we utilize. I think our IT department has it. So it's just a matter of building the survey and getting it uploaded. I'd say we could probably turn it around in a couple days if we really put to it. So not too difficult.
Thank you.
Lupe, you have anything else?
If we do that survey, how long are we gonna leave it out? How long is it gonna run for?
I missed the question, I'm sorry.
If we do that survey, how long are we gonna let people respond?
That's a good question. What's the normal time frame? I've seen it go until open, it's open until filled.
Okay, I think there might be, I think that's two different questions? Because I think Lupe is asking about the survey that we'd ask our community and
Oh,
staff.
okay, I'm sorry.
How long we would have that? Is it a week? Is it
Gotcha,
2 weeks?
yeah,
And then I
yeah.
think what you were talking about was how long would we leave the
Announcement, yeah,
position
right.
advertisement open?
Yeah, it was just a little hard to hear you, so I apologize. Maybe,
Sorry, I'm in the middle.
I'm glad you can hear.
I would say a good month.
About a month.
Well,
Give the
people
survey a
are
month.
still fresh in the school year. You don't want to drag it out too far, and then people are fatigued by the holidays. I think, open it up for a month. Hopefully, you get enough of a sample size to help you. You want at least, I don't know, everybody has a different number. They say a 10% sample size is good. I want to say more than that is better. So I would just say open it up for a month and look for a sample size of at least 30 to 40% return. So if you're sending it out to staff, 1,000 staff, you get a few hundred back. That's usually a decent sample size. You want more. The more the merrier, obviously. Same thing for our community. We have thousands of people, and it just depends on the length of the survey also matters. If you have 30 questions, they're not going to be apt to fill out. They're going to have fatigue by the time they get to number 18. So you want your questions to be very succinct, not that many, but enough that you can make a good decision. I don't know what that number is. That's going to be up to you guys to kind of figure out. But certainly, if you have 50 questions, you're going to lose people.
Yeah, no, that's too many, yeah. What's the best way to get this out to the community? I know press releases and stuff like that, but could it also go to the parents through like Parent Square or something like that?
Absolutely, we can do an all broadcast on Parent Square, on our website. Maybe enlist one of our ace reporters in the back there to help us advertise. I'm sure once we have some kind of format in place, Carson, now everybody was going to want to cover it. It's a big deal. I mean, it's tantamount to hiring a mayor for the city, is what it means to have a superintendent here. So it'll make a big splash.
So we'll have the survey. Is there something else do you want to have a special meeting open to the public to have the public come in and talk about it too? Or you want to limit it to the survey? Do you want to limit it to public comment when we have our meetings or the next workshop? I mean, how do you want to proceed that way too, to get community?
Yeah, that'd be up to the board, but I had it on my notes here to talk about having a community meeting and what time frame that should fit in. And if we're doing the survey, I guess I personally wouldn't have a problem with having a community meeting also. But I don't know how other districts do it.
So you can do it all kinds of ways, Mr. Varner. You can just have a survey. You can have a survey and then have spokespeople from focus groups. You can have Latino families weigh in. Depending on the demographic you're looking for, you can have teachers weigh in, maybe with Mr. Wallace leading that focus group and giving you some feedback. Same thing for the admin and the classified. You can divide and conquer any way that you want. So you can have both. You can have surveys and you can have community input, but you can also have focused community input. So you look at the respective groups in our town and have one or two people speak for that group, if you will. So you don't have everybody coming up here. Not that we don't want that, but it makes for a long search. Yeah.
Well, and I'm thinking, when we're looking at doing workshops, when obviously we're going to review the survey before it goes out in a workshop, we'll get some input there as well. And then when we review the results of the survey, that will also be in a public meeting. And we could certainly take input at that time as well with it, right? Doesn't seem.
And I think the other thing that we could keep focused on too is we have our strategic plan, which has basically been brought to us by the community, the parents, the teachers, the admin, and us as a guide. So we have 5 basic pillars that we already know we want in a superintendent, basically. So we should keep that in mind too when we're developing the questions and getting public input, because we have gotten that. I think that's part of that whole strategic plan that we've done, is that we've had that whole Carson City get together and talk about it thing.
And Mrs. Wilkie, that's a perfect segue to some of the questions you're going to be asking. It should be based on what we currently find successful, and that would be the strategic plan, amongst other mission and vision goals that we have in the district. And any good candidate would be looking at our website, looking at those things anyway.
Is it normal practice to have the top 3 candidates come in and go through or visit the district? You know, maybe go out and visit the classrooms or some of the principals and stuff like that? Is that common practice?
It is actually. When you get to the final 2 or 3, it is common practice for those candidates to meet the public, for them to kind of give their gestalt or their vision for leadership, for what they want to see in the school district. So especially if they're not from in-district, you want to get to know them a little bit and get familiar with their character and, you know, maybe some of their resume items and be able to ask them questions about that. But yeah, that's a typical process for the search. And that usually takes Mr. Varner a good few days, usually a day per person. And then you finally at the end select, you know, in open meeting who you want.
And then Ryan, in here it says minimum of 4 trustees, but we could have all 7, correct? That's how Washoe did theirs. Okay.
Yes.
Any other discussion? If not, Ryan, I'd ask you, if we wanted to make any decision, we'd have to agendize that for the next meeting.
Yeah, because this is discussion only, I think the points that were made would be sort of akin to a request for agenda item at the end of our regular agenda. And so Mr. Casiopo will be able to review the notes and talk to any of the trustees and decide what should be agendized as far as the next step here goes.
Okay.
And Mr. Vice President, if it is another workshop, you can agendize an action item at the workshop
Oh,
itself.
at the workshop, okay.
It just has to be properly agendized and noticed to the public.
Okay, good. Jose, you have any other input?
I think my brain is well picked, but I'm sure I missed something. There's so many different ways to hire a superintendent. I don't think there's one, you know, mold, if you will. I think it just needs to be the right process for us and for looking for the next superintendent and what your vision is, along with that new person to come in and be able to mesh and have that fit. So that's the entire process in a nutshell, is what is the best fit for these times. And I can tell you there are a lot of superintendents that are leaving because of these times. They're just outright, they're done. And a lot of their subordinates are not wanting those jobs either. So we're facing an intriguing time where the superintendency is not that coveted nationwide. People are not looking at it as, wow, this is going to be a great job. They're going, oh my gosh, you know, what are we in for, as we all know. So I think for what it's worth, we do have plenty of time to vet the best person and be able to find the right fit.
Yeah, because I mean, just the climate of here right now, too. I mean, housing is going to be a big thing if they're not from this district. That's something that we're going to really have to look at, considering the way both rentals and sales are going. They're all pretty up there. But yeah, it's kind of like special ed teachers, I think, right now. It's hard to find the good ones. And then to keep them.
Yeah, to
It's
keep
going to
them
be
in.
very important that we find the person that we want to keep for a while. We don't want to keep doing this.
No, not every 2 or 3 years.
Well, and I think it's important to remember, I like the idea of everything as a draft, because if we've learned nothing in the last year, it's that everything changes and can change in a matter of days. So just to keep that in mind, that we need to be flexible and as we go about this.
So Jose, if this is the first time we've done this in 30 years, how did we appoint people without getting in trouble?
That's really your call. You can do that. I mean, it has happened in many districts where they just appoint people that they know. I mean, it's happened in Douglas a bunch of times as well. So they didn't do a search. They just said, okay, you're it. You want it? You got it.
Suppose that's why we do associate superintendents too, to groom you guys too, huh? Have our own program.
Don, you have anything else? Lupe, anything else? Stacy? Thank you for your input.
Yep, I'm good.
Laurel? I guess if no other discussions by anybody, then we'll go ahead and close the workshop. And we'll meet again at 7 o'clock to adjourn not to adjourn, but to start our next meeting. And we'll be in recess until then. August 24th, 2021 school board meeting to order. Can you hear me? The public is reminded that per Governor Sisolak's emergency directive, that all people in a public building should be wearing a mask. I want to take 1 minute, if we could, of silence for Mr. Paul Brown, who was a longtime custodian at Fritz Elementary. So if we could have 1 minute of silence in respect for him. Thank you. I know his family will appreciate it, and our thoughts and prayers go with the family. We'll move for the adoption of the agenda. Do we have a
I move that we adopt the agenda as submitted.
Second.
second? Second by Laurel. Or it's Lupe, I'm sorry. Any public discussion about the agenda? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. We'll move on now to the superintendent's report. Mr. Stokes?
Thank you, Vice President Varner, members of the board, members of the community. Welcome this evening. Just a couple of events for your information. Please mark on your calendar September the 2nd, 2021. There'll be a joint meeting between the Board of Supervisors and the Board of Trustees. As you recall, we do these meetings twice a year. And because of COVID, it's been some time since the groups have been able to meet. So that meeting will be here, and we'll leave it up to the staff here as to how they're going to arrange the groups. I'd also like to provide some information about current conditions, especially as it applies to the smoky skies. Obviously, this is a condition that it's not new, but I think the conditions under which we are facing with the Caldor fire in particularly, as you know, if you've been watching the news, that particular fire is 9% contained and has a lot of fuel in front of it. And because it looks like this fire is going to be long-lasting, it could really impact conditions here in Carson City and, of course, in our schools for an unknown period of time. But because there are concerns for both the health of students and staff, and of course really all citizens, we've had to come up with a process by which we are going to cancel school based on the air quality index that has been identified through airnow.gov. I've had some questions from community members asking why we're using that particular measuring system. Why not another system like Purple Air, which is one that people have mentioned regularly? There seems to be quite a variation between those devices. And so we have found that the most consistent number for Carson City, especially as it applies to the immediacy of the zip code 89701, we're using that particular set of data to help us make those calls. So within that, we're looking at a air quality index number of 400 to be used as the high-end number of the air quality index itself as the time when we would cancel school. And so just to clarify for the community, when a decision is made to cancel school, we put out information to our media outlets. We also put a message on our webpage, and we have a phone tree that goes to all of our staff members, and that is set up through the individual schools. And so we're able to really get the message out quite well. We also use Parent Square, which is an email notification to both students, parents, and staff. And so we have quite a robust process used to notify people if we're not going to have school. Some folks, however, have been confused and they think that we will notify people if school is in session. That's really not how this works. We would be waking people up every morning at 5:30, and then we would get other questions about that process. So we're only going to notify the public and our staff when school is canceled. People have asked me why we're using this number of 400 air quality index, and the Nevada Association of Interscholastic Athletics has this document which is very similar in terms of the setup of the chart here, and it corresponds with the airnow.gov, which provides some numbers, some values, which recommend that schools or anybody who's responsible for children during a wildfire smoke event on how they should manage their affairs. And so the far right category here is the hazardous chart designation, and that number is identified as 301 to 500. So many folks have asked, why aren't we using the number of 301 as the top end? Why stopping at 400? Well, according to the NIAA, the events that are at school, and this applies both to students and to staff, these events can be carried out, but with certain conditions of caution being taken. And that number at the very end of the chart here is 500. And so we thought that it would make more sense for us to be able to use the NIAA recommendations, but not at its highest level. So if the number hits 400 air quality index at airnow.gov by about 5:30 in the morning, then we would call school off. But before that, or once if the kids are already at school and we're already having school, and if the number hits 400 or goes beyond, we're not going to turn around and send them home. We believe our kids are safe inside our buildings, as safe as they are at other locations. Our buildings are well equipped with air handling equipment and conditions that are filtered with hospital quality filters. Some folks have said, well, we still see smoke in the buildings, and that's probably true. Think of a large building with 1,000 people coming and going at any given time. There will be smoke that finds its way inside our buildings. However, because of that large volume of air inside our buildings, we have the capacity to filter that air quickly, and really all of that is aimed at trying to keep our kids and our staff safe. So just wanted to make that information available to you. There's more information about our decisions around canceling school when conditions associated with wildfires really impact our situation on our website, and that's at www.carsоncityschools.com. And you can always call your school or you can call the district office if you have more questions. So board members, hopefully that gives you some guidance and some understanding as to why we've taken the steps that we have. Trustee Crossman.
Yeah, I have a question. I've had some parents ask me why we're not doing remote days during the smoke. Does the Nevada Department of Education approve remote learning for smoke days, or what's their position on that?
Thank you for that question. The Nevada Department of Education has let us know that the only way we can fully utilize remote training or use technology is if there's a public health issue. And that's why the remote learning was a possibility during last year's pandemic process, but it is not permitted when we have an inclement weather day, like if we have a snow day. You probably remember that Washoe County was called to question several times in previous years when they tried to use what they were calling virtual days for a snow day. And so it's just been explained to us that we are not able to use our technology, which is unfortunate because we have that capacity and we have the ability to do that. But it'll actually require a change in the law for us to be given that permission.
Thank you, Mrs. Stokes.
Thank you. That's the end of my report.
Thank you. We'll move on to board reports and board members' comments, and this is for information only. We'll start with Julia Kaiser down at the end there.
Okay.
And she's representing Carson
so like
High
this.
School.
Okay. Hi, I'm Julia Kaiser. I'm part of the student council at Carson High. I'm student body vice president. It's been super fun this year with some normalcy going on. And so this year we're planning on having a completely normal homecoming, which is going to be really good. And then we're also having our fall sports start as normal this year. We have football going on. We have cheerleading. We have cross country. We have volleyball. We have both boys and girls tennis. And then we have girls tennis. And we have tournaments coming up for all those, and meets and games and all that is planned out. So that's been super fun. As for our homecoming, we're going to have a spirit week. We're going to have after school activities, lunchtime activities. We're going to have I'm pretty sure an outside dance. I don't think that's been completely decided yet, but we are definitely having a dance, which is super fun. So things at Carson High have been going really good.
Thank you very much. Stacy?
No, just want to welcome everybody back for this school year and to thank the custodians for their hard work over the summer and getting the buildings ready. We appreciate that, and we're looking forward to a great school year.
Thank you. Dawn? Lupe?
I do have a report from Principal Sona from Silvergate Elementary School. So she reported that all the students are very happy to be all together again back in the school. And they had their back to school night, and it was very well attended by the parents. They also began the MAP testing. And then I also want to congratulate Principal Lee Conley for hiring one of his very own students. Herman Fernandez Hernandez was a student at Eagle Valley Middle School, and then he was also an ESL student and was also part of the Jumpstart program, then transitioned to WNC, and he was very engaged at WNC, moved on to UNR, and was very successful in completing his program, and now he is back contributing to our Carson City School District. So congratulations to him, and we hope to see many more students follow his footsteps.
Yeah, he seems like a great guy, and we welcome him.
Definitely. That concludes my report.
Laurel?
Mr. Brown, Principal Brown over at Fritch Elementary School would like to thank all of the staff and parents for an awesome start to the school year. I know awesome is one of the words they like to use at Fritch. And Principal Ward DeJoseph from Fremont Elementary wants everyone to know that there is a PTA meeting tomorrow, 7:30. It's going to be in the school library and on Zoom. And on August 31st, they're having their parent information and support meeting. They'll meet at 5:30 in the library, and they'll also film it and make it available on their website. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. I have two reports. I have one for Boardwalk Bray. They'd like everyone to know that they're off to a good start. They love having all the students back in the building. They wanted to thank all the families who attended their back-to-school night meet and greet and barbecue. I happened to be there for that event. It was very, very well attended. I would estimate probably 400 or plus people and kids showed up, so it was really a great event. it was a great way to kick off the new year. They want to also remind people that the Boardwick Braid Day at the Reno Aces is Sunday, September 19th. Tickets can be purchased online using the link that was sent out via Parent Square, and a portion of the ticket sales are given back to support Boardwick students. And if you attend, according to the flyer, you also get a free hat, and hot dogs are only $1. So if nothing else, it would be good to have a hot dog. And at Carson Middle School, they would like to thank their fabulous PTA members for providing lunch to their staff last Friday. The middle staff, Carson Middle staff, is looking forward to a great partnership with the PTA this year. Carson Middle School will also be starting their MAP testing beginning September 8th through the 10th. And then their open house will be held at the Carson Middle School on September 16th from 5:30 to 7:30. And they'll follow a student schedule rotation so the parents and guardians are able to attend all the classes. And that concludes my report. Do we have any association reports? Mr. Wallace?
Good evening, Mr. Vice President, Trustees, Superintendent Stokes, staff, and the general public. My name is Brian Wallace, OCEA President, and we're back. Everyone I've talked to throughout the schools are extremely excited. Our new hire event a week and a half ago was amazing. Once again, I didn't get to meet Carrie Pryor's replacement, Miss Prey, unfortunately, but it meant we had Carrie Pryor again. So that was wonderful because she's always done such a great job with our new hires. We're looking forward to continue that partnership and to continue to strengthen all the supports we have in place. I love when we do our new hire event because I think we overwhelm them with actual support and not the opposite direction, which is amazing for all of us. I would like to also echo the thank to all the custodians throughout the sites right now, and a big thanks to a personal thank you and from OCA to everyone at Eagle Valley for pulling together over there at that site. Construction's always interesting, and a few curveballs can make it even more entertaining. But with lots of work, especially with the full district support, we were back in the classroom ready to go late that Friday, and Monday morning, they had it ready. It was just really amazing to walk in there and see it in the shape it was, considering some of the issues that creeped up. And of course, construction is always exciting again, because been there 20 years and I can't wait to see how this continues. OCA continues to roll along and enjoy our partnership with each of you. Currently, we represent just right under 80% of the teachers right now, and they do love belonging to this district. Listening to the roundtable about hiring a new superintendent and everything Carson City has to offer, and how we can continue to compete with other districts for teachers continues to put us toward the top, especially with programs like our new hire. So we've been really happy to support all of that and look forward to another wonderful school year in Carson City.
Thank you. Any other association reports? And then do we have a update on the Nevada Association of School Boards? Laurel?
Just if you haven't yet signed up for the training, there will be training September 10th and 11th in Las Vegas, and that same training will be offered in Reno October, I believe it's the 9th and 10th. Or nope, it's the 8th and 9th. And so one of those, it's going to be the same thing at either location. So whatever fits your schedule, you can go ahead and make arrangements. Renee should have all the information.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 7, presentation on the difference between social workers, school social workers, and school guidance counselors. This is for discussion only. And we have Nikki Hindi, and hopefully I get this name right, Alejandra Ayala. Is that close? Okay, thank you. Go ahead, thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Varner and trustees. Mr. Stokes? So we just wanted to share a little bit about...
Would you identify yourself for the
Oh,
record,
sorry.
please?
My name's Nikki Hendy. I am lead counselor at Carson High School.
And I am Alejandra. I am Alejandra Ayala, lead PLC for the school social workers and also lead at the high school.
Thank you.
So we just wanted to talk to you a little bit about what school counselors and school social workers do here in Carson City and how we work together to support all students. So in Carson City, we do have 14 school counselors at 4 of the schools, so all of the secondary schools, the 2 middle schools and the 2 high schools. We currently don't have any elementary school counselors. Several of our counselors are ELAD, so we have our certification in teaching students with who are second language learners or are GATE certified. So several of us are certified in teaching GATE students. Our PLC lead is Bridget Gordon. She couldn't be here tonight. She is taking her son up to start his first year of college, so that's why she's not here tonight. One of the things that was requested for us to talk about a little bit was the licensure for school counselors. So we are required to have a master's in school counseling with 600 internship hours. We are required to take classes in individual and group counseling, educational assessments, career counseling, comprehensive school counseling programs, multicultural counseling, family engagement, and school-based practices. Several of our counselors, the majority of the counselors in this district are also certified to teach, and many have been teachers before. A quote from one of our Carson High seniors: "My school counselor is like a safe place for me. She always knows the answers. I can ask her about school, or if I'm anxious, or if I need ideas for college, and she knows all of the answers. Sometimes she just knows where to send me." So oftentimes it is just kind of knowing what the outside resources are for our students if we don't have the answers.
And for the social workers, we currently have 12, one at every school. Again, I am the PLC lead. The licensure, right now, everyone that's working for the district, it is a master's degree. The licensure title just changed from an LSW to LMSW, which includes the master's degree within the licensure. Or the LCSW, we currently only have one, and that just means that they have an additional 3,000 clinical internship hours that are supervised. The difference between the two, it's LCSWs can provide clinical therapy services. And the other requirement for us is to have the endorsement through the Nevada Department of Ed for social workers in schools. There's also a quote, it is in Spanish, just thanking the social worker that it says, "Hi, how are you? I hope you had a great day. I want to thank you for listening to me and being with me when I've needed it. When I talk to you, I feel comfortable. I've come to really trust you because you have been very nice to me, and be for sure that I listen to everything you tell me." This was a letter that was written by an 8th grade students to one of our social workers in thanking them for that support, and it did take, a while to build that report.
I'm not going to go through all of this with you, but this is from the state, so it includes all student support professionals. So you can see there's overlap with the school counselor, school social worker, and school psychologist. So we all work together to support students through education, through emotional times. We're there to support them through their learning as well. So the school psychologist does the testing, and we work with students, parents, and families. Oh, I think I missed one. Oh, maybe not. Okay. So at the elementary school level, if we had school counselors, really a lot of what they do is classroom lessons. So they do career exploration, college culture, and they do some SEL. So they might do anger management, conflict resolution, time management, things like that. They meet with students individually or with groups. There's a lot of groups run at elementary schools with social skills, grief, friendship, divorce, things like that. School counselors at the elementary school level
often run 504. So at all the secondary schools, the 504s are written by and overseen by school counselors. Right now at the elementary schools, that is done by deans. They can also plan whole school events, including college fairs. They attend IEPs and work with classroom teachers and identify issues that impact school performance.
For the public, could you describe what a 504 is?
It is for students that have some sort of disability that doesn't need an IEP. So for instance, a student with type 1 diabetes who might need to take a test on another day because they're having a low blood sugar, or access to the nurse at any time when they need it, things like that.
Thank you.
And for the school social workers and elementary, like Nikki mentioned, currently we don't have any school social workers at elementary level, so they are doing, providing a lot of that support with 504 services, making sure that they're there for the students. School-wide events, the examples like Week of Respect, Kindness Week, a lot of group support, whether social skills, anger management, friendship, consultation with staff. So just making sure that they're not only there for the students and families, but also for staff if they run into any kind of issues, with the students, that they could also be of support for them. They do provide support with the IEPs. They do individual work with students, such as regulations, self-regulation skills. We do go into suicide screenings, case management, home visits, any basic needs, and advocacy for the students.
At the upper levels, the school counselors really become that placement expert as far as classes go. So we work with the students on a yearly basis, helping them develop their 4-year plan, and then meeting with them regularly to go over that plan and make sure that they're taking the right classes, that they're challenging themselves to the best that they can with the skills that they have. So we really work on that. We work with them individually with problem solving. So if they're struggling academically or socially, whether that be with, boyfriend or friends or parents or siblings, whatever, or with a teacher even. Like I said, we do the 504 management. We do classroom lessons. So that could be academic, like goal setting, finding the right college, scholarship writing, and then also with SEL, for instance, with anxiety management. We can run small groups. We do individual work and referrals. So we often refer out if it's something. We really focus on solution-based brief counseling with students. So we are not trained therapists. So really, we work with them for 15, 20 minutes, half an hour maybe. And then if it's something that it's not a quick problem-solving situation, we definitely refer them out, sometimes to our social workers, sometimes out into the community. We run college and career events, and we help students individually with that as well. We are there for new students, so we register all of our new students. We set them up with tours of the school, things like that. We do all the scheduling. We attend IEPs and collaborate with teachers to make sure that students are taking the right classes. And then we work with local colleges and businesses to provide pathways and experiences.
And for the school social workers, again, we do a lot of school-wide events. Last year, we really focused on, at the high school, Carson High School, we focused on focusing on doing proactive protective factors campaigns against suicide. Again, just helping kids start thinking about, where's their trusted adult, people that they can reach out to. As a school-wide event, we do a lot of group work, again, social skills related to anxiety, conflict mediation. We work very closely with our deans as well in regards to supporting students, whether, when they're coming back from out-of-school suspension, detention, anything like that, that we're also supporting them, not falling too far behind, or helping, hopefully not repeat whatever the behavior that led to that. Again, we participate on IEPs 504, work close together with the counselors on that. Provide individual, student, and family support, case management. So if it's needed to do those community referrals, to connect them with services, just following up with the family, making sure that we've addressed some of the barriers that they may run into when connecting to those resources. Again, basic needs. We collaborate with other teachers and staff and community partners. Again, advocating for students and families mental health screeners, and then home visits, just to really support the family and the student in their own environment as well. And just to wrap it up, again, we do work very closely with our school counselors in helping support our students and our families, making sure that, you know, they have the needed resources and that they're learning any barriers that are facing, to make sure that we address those. Provide support, referrals, whether that's through us or again out to the community. We refer them back to counselors at times when it has to do with academic, which is, again, it's not so much our field, but they can focus more on those academics, class advisements, college-related stuff. And then we just work together to give support to students, again, mostly for those groups or school-wide events and resources.
Do you have any questions?
Stacy, we'll start with you.
Basically, just kind of give us kind of an overview of what like last year was, because, and then maybe the plan you have for catching some of these kids that are, especially the mental aspect of it from the COVID.
Yeah, last year was different. It was a struggle because, you know, generally the counselors will see every one of their students throughout the year, and it was really difficult. With the students only being in their classes 1 day a week, we really didn't want to take away from that time they had with teachers. So it was tricky to get in touch with everybody. We definitely had students that reached out to us, and we met with them as often as they needed. We definitely had some students that came down quite often for that emotional support. I know in both of our offices, but we were also working really a lot with the teachers as far as making sure we got the students into the correct classes and things like that. Moving forward, we're definitely looking forward to getting back into working with our students. We really have missed that face-to-face contact. And so we're excited that they're back every day. We're excited, you know, the first 2 weeks for counseling at least is a whole lot of schedule changes, which is our least favorite part of the job. So we're really looking forward to getting back to working with students and meeting their needs, whether that be emotionally or, you know, looking into colleges and future careers and their classes and down the line.
Yeah, like it has been very different, you know, from last year to this year. I think one of the biggest things is we are, well, at our office, we are seeing an increase on those students that struggle with anxiety. You know, the class size has increased, whether they were at home full-time or that hybrid schedule, classes were much smaller. So that is something that students are reporting, you know, crowded hallways, bigger classes. The positive is that students are being seen more regularly by staff and teachers and their peers. I find that a lot of peers are speaking up, you know, when concerned for a friend or somebody that they're noticing changes in behavior, whereas before, if they're not seeing them as regularly, those could be missed. So there are positives there that we do see them more regularly to offer that support.
Washoe had a massive, well, not massive, but they've had suicides. And we've been blessed enough here in Carson that we haven't. And I think that attributes a lot to what both you people do. And we really do appreciate the work that you guys do and the reach out that you do. And we're very thankful to especially have the social workers working hand in hand. As a board, we've made a commitment to make sure you guys got benefits and stuff, and being part of our employees. So we're just really thankful that we've had the supports in hand, and I'm glad that you guys are reaching out more. Thank you.
Dawn, do you have any questions? Lupe?
I just want to say thank you for providing that safe environment for those students because it really does make a huge difference on their performance. So thank you both for what you do.
Laurel? Again, I would just thank you. I've had some personal experience through my granddaughter. I keep talking about her because that's my connection to the schools with having to go to social workers and the counselors and stuff like that. And it's always been very helpful. Helped her through whatever was going through drama in middle school. So thank you.
We really appreciate the board support, both counseling and social work. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Can you hear me? Okay, I'm sorry about that. This little thing here. All right, I'll get closer to the microphone. We'll move on to public comments. Comments may be made on any matter within the authority of the board. Public comments will be taken on items marked for possible action before action is taken. Speakers are asked to come to the table, sign in if you haven't already, speak into the microphone, and identify yourself for the record. Speakers are to limit their comments to no more than 3 minutes and to not simply repeat comments made by others. So I have quite a few here, so I'll just start going through them and call you up to speak. First one I have is Nick Mayer, Maier. You, Nick? Okay, great. Just a reminder, we have a lot of people speaking, so we have to keep it to 3 minutes.
I understand. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
My name is Nicholas Meyer, and I want to tell you that I don't envy board members, school board members now, because you are in a very difficult situation dealing with emergency directives from the governor. And you are being asked to make medical decisions that you probably didn't sign up for when you ran for school board. So I just want to let you know that, I empathize with your situation. However, you are dealing with very, very delicate and dangerous situations regarding the health of children. And the simple fact is this: the CDC and the NIH are giving you and the American people bad advice about the COVID virus and how to deal with this virus. They're not following their own science. Let's look at the effectiveness of masks. Okay, respiratory viruses are spread through airborne transmission, and virus particles are so small that they can pass through any mask. And there's no definitive study that the CDC has promoted, and probably no definitive study that you have given to your citizens that show that masks are effective. Yet the CDC and the NIH continue to recommend mask wearing. If you as a board are going to continue to enforce mask wearing, then you as a board have to present data to the citizens, okay, that shows your competency in this matter. Because you're practicing medicine now, and you are going to be personally liable if a child is harmed. And there can be a lot of harm that comes to children from wearing masks all day long. Second, I want to address mandates for testing unvaccinated students, coaches, and staff. Recent studies have shown that vaccinated people are spreaders of the virus as much or more than unvaccinated persons. There was a recent article in a scientific magazine called Nature that identifies 4 separate studies that show that the Delta variant is spread widely by vaccinated individuals. Therefore, if vaccinated individuals who show no symptoms can spread the virus, what is the logic behind only testing unvaccinated athletes? If you're going to test, you have to test everyone, because everyone can spread the virus. If you don't do that, and you only test the unvaccinated, you are segregating and discriminating against persons based on their health status.
I'm sorry, your 3 minutes is up, but if you want to submit the remainder of your comments, we'll put them in the record.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Michelle Long.
My name is Michelle Long, for the record.
Thank you.
Press this.
Yeah, it should be green.
Should be green. All right. The Carson City School Board, during the past 20 months, has conspired with the tyrannical leadership of the state of Nevada to act in a manner which is far beyond the authority granted to the body and can be interpreted as illegal, unconstitutional, immoral, and unethical. The board has failed to listen to and act according to the will of the people. Therefore, the board has implemented policy surrounding COVID-19, which is medically proven ineffective in preventing the spread of virus and proven to have dangerous consequences, both physically and mentally. Subsequently, either by your own willful ignorance or deliberate intent, has put the safety and welfare of our children at considerable risk. One does not have to look far to find information regarding COVID-19, which at the very least would suggest taking extreme caution when mandating policy that affects the health of our children. This is a fact. It is universally accepted by all reputable government organizations, policymakers, leaders, and physicians that it is absolutely forbidden to coerce, influence, or force any human being to be a part of any experimental medical treatment. Let the citizens remind the board that the Constitution of the United States still reigns in this country. You have zero authority to infringe on our constitutional rights by mandating mask wearing and coercing children to be victim of an investigational medical experiment with unknown consequences. To mandate any medical procedure by any form of government is a violation of civil liberties and an act of tyranny, and we will hold you accountable personally. And let me tell you something. When tyranny becomes law, rebellion becomes duty, and Nevada parents, all these parents, we are on duty. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Casey Rogers.
Do I have to push the button? No. Okay. You can hear me. I have several things I want to address right now. The federal government has hidden some information, and there's whistleblowers going out talking about how 45,000 people have died from the vaccination, a vaccination that keeps getting propelled by people that I'm looking at right now and other people in the other aspects of education. So, as far as it goes with this face mask thing that you were all wearing, I'd just like you to know that I just presented you with 7 different documents, peer-reviewed studies on some of them that show, one of them from Stanford, which I'm going to read right now, and it specifically addresses the fact that masks don't work. You are all wearing masks that don't work, and you force your teachers, as far as I know, are teachers in masks right now? Are teachers in masks right now? Teachers are in masks, so your staff is in masks that don't work. Face masks. The existing scientific evidence challenge the safety and efficacy of wearing face masks as preventative intervention for COVID-19. The data suggests that both medical and non-medical face masks are ineffective to block human-to-human transmission of viral and infectious disease such as SARS-CoV-2 and COVID-19, supporting against the uses of face masks. wearing face masks has been demonstrated to have substantial adverse psychological and physiological effects. These include hypoxia. The definition of hypoxia is the deprivation of oxygen to the brain and is one of the deadliest injuries. Even people who survive hypoxia may experience lifelong side effects. Continuing, hypercapnia, shortness of breath, increased acidity, and toxicity, activation of fear and stress response, rise in stress hormones, immunosuppression, fatigue, headaches, decline in cognitive performance, predisposition for viral and infectious disease, chronic stress, anxiety, and depression. Furthermore, development of cases after mask mandates. In many states, coronavirus infections strongly increase after mask mandates have been introduced. Let me read that again. Coronavirus infections strongly increased after mask mandates have been introduced. The following charts show the typical examples of Australia, Belgium, France, Germany, Ireland, Italy, Spain, UK, California, Hawaii. Furthermore, a direct comparison between the US states with and without mask mandates indicates that mask mandates have made no difference. This is for you as well. You're testing our athletes right now. You're segregating them. You're segregating them by vaccinated and unvaccinated.
I'm sorry, your 3 minutes is up, but thank you, and we'll submit your comments. Marie Foster is next. Is Marie here? No? Okay. Is she outside or just left? Then we have Dr. Freddie Simon. Yes, and if you'd state your name for the record.
Fred Simon. I'm a medical doctor boarded by the American Board of Surgery and Surgery Critical Care Medicine. Ran a ICU for many years, Elite Trauma Center, NIH grant on sepsis-related and immunosuppression, pancreatic immunosuppression, and volunteered last year in a COVID ICU. Where's the data? The NIH funded, put money forward for funding of masks. No data supports a mandate. Where is it? CDC, no data to support a mandate. Industry, making billions of dollars. What does industry do? They go out and do research to make money. No data to support masks. So if you mandate masks, you're practicing medicine. Sisolak's practicing medicine without a license. Okay? You may get a mandate from above, but you're not absolved for things that may happen. You are liable. I'm a medical legal expert, 42 states, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. 750 affidavits, 50 trials. I know what I'm talking about. Medicine is based on evidence-based medicine. For you to vote on a mandate, you're either ignorant, which means you're lacking information, you're coerced by tyranny, or you just don't care. All the evidence ahead of me has been presented. There's plenty of papers that show the deleterious aspects of masks. You must provide data to these parents. If any child suffers a major mental health event or a physical event, you will be liable. You will be negligent based upon the standards of medicine, including Mr. Sisolak, but they're not going to save you. You will be abandoned by the state, Mr. Sisolak, and you will be in your own arena in a judicial process. You must think about this. This is about the welfare of children. And you better do your due diligence because there's a lot of data coming out by a lot of people who are leaking it out. Thank you. I hope you have a nice night.
Next, we have Joy Truskowski. I'm sorry.
Okay, my name is Joy Trushinsky.
I'll try to remember that.
It's all right. We have a birthright given to us by God, and that birthright is based on liberty. Our founding fathers expressed this truth in the Declaration of Independence, stating that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving from the consent of the governed. The United States Constitution outlines the powers given to the federal government and the state governments, but gives the supreme power to the people. The United States Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Unfortunately, there is a general misconception that any law passed by Congress or state legislatures constitutes the law of the land. This is not true. The truth is that any law passed by Congress or a state legislature that violates the United States Constitution is not valid. The Supreme Court in 1803 upheld this truth in Marbury versus Madison by stating all laws which are repugnant to the Constitution are null and void. This past year, mostly the Democrat-controlled state governments violated our constitutional rights with unnecessary year-long lockdowns and mass mandates due to the COVID-19 virus, which is similar to the flu. What was so diabolical about this is that very early on, doctors like Simone Gold and 16 others came out with cures to the COVID-19 virus, cures like hydroxychloroquine with zinc and ivermectin, but they were silenced. These drugs were banned and people died. Also, Dr. Gold and others said masks do not protect you from the COVID-19 virus, and experimental, untested vaccines were dangerous. They were maligned. But these doctors were speaking the truth. Look up the information about COVID-19 virus, the COVID-19 virus, masks, vaccines, and your constitutional rights at americasfrontlinedoctors.org. I say to all parents, all the people, no masks, no vaccines for our children, as both are unnecessary and harmful. Stand up for your rights.
Joy, thank you. Next, we have Lori Kusick. Come forward, please, and state your name for the record.
Lori Cusick. So what do I do? Press a button.
If it's green, it should be ready to go.
Hello, am I on?
Yes, I think so.
I don't really have much to say, but I pre-recorded, so I feel like if I can get it to go. It's kind of a songish type thing. So please bear with me. Can you hear me? Okay. All right. So if I can get it to go. It's a songish. Is it picking up?
Yeah, if you hold it close, you can hear it.
I had a vision. I saw myself in a concentration camp. Alone, naked, emaciated, near dead.
got dropped in my ear, I believe. The word weapon. The vaccines. God made me tell me that those are weapons. That also masks are health hazards. Lord, don't let us go there. Lord, don't let us stay there. America, repent. This is a spiritual matter. This is a spiritual matter. You left your first love. You left your first love. Jesus. Repentance, repentance, God forgive us, God forgive us.
I'm sorry, but your 3 minutes is up. Thank you very much.
A cleansing,
You have to stop, I'm sorry.
there's going to be a cleansing.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Next, we have Kate Morrill. And just state your name for the record, please.
My name is Kate Mora, and I am going to change the subject a little bit here. It is my understanding that you have partnered with National Education Equity, and so I researched them. Upon doing so, I am concerned that their tagline is "Talent is equally distributed, opportunity is not." This is a nonsensical statement. Does this mean that the reason I don't have the fame Whitney Houston enjoyed is not because I can't sing a note, but because the opportunity did not exist for me to do so? If this is the case, then have Whitney do it. While our founders espoused equality, they were not saying that everyone is equally talented. We clearly are not, or I would be able to sing as well as Whitney. Rather, God endowed each individual with talents unique to them. What the founders sought was equality of protection under the law and individual rights. This affords us equal opportunity to chase down whatever God has put in our hearts to do. This view of equality through the founders' eyes also allows the individual property rights to possess what is earned, and this lends dignity to work. I urge you to take a long and intellectually honest review of America's history. You will find that while we have made mistakes, we have endeavored to remedy those errors. You will also find that there are millions of rags to riches stories. There are millions of individuals who have applied diligent hands to the object of obtaining the quality of life they desire, and they've been amply rewarded for their efforts. This includes people of every race and color. Clearly, the opportunity exists. Only the systems and traditions of liberty that we enjoy can give us the opportunity to achieve whatever we want. The sky is the limit, but the key components are finding out where your talent lies and putting that to work. Please do not indoctrinate our youth with the false ideology that by virtue of the American system, they are victims. They are not victims. They have won the lottery by being born in a country where they are free to achieve as much as they want in any area of their choosing, should they actively strive for it. This is what makes America exceptional, and this is what you need to be teaching. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Ashley Stewart. Come on up, Ashley, and for the record, just state your name. And talk into the microphone, thank you.
Hello, I'm Ashley Stewart. So I am here to talk about something that I'm very concerned happening to other kids. Last year, I came down with COVID, and people that I sat next to in class and some of my friends had to go in quarantine. And when I got back from quarantine, a lot of the kids that I sat next to got mad at me for getting COVID. And I am very concerned that if you keep trying to do random testing, it's going to happen to more than a few kids. Thank you for your time.
Ashley, thank you very much. Very good, Ashley, thank you. We have Michael Morrissey. Michael Morrissey. Yeah, and for the record, Michael, just state your name.
Michael Morrissey, Battleborn Patriots taking Nevada back. I just want to point out that this is the most intelligent, quote, disease that the world has ever known. This virus can travel 6 feet. It cannot travel 6 feet 1 inches or greater. It can live only on surfaces, on all surfaces except any that come in the mail or from Amazon or Target. It does not live in Target. It does not live in Walmart. It does not live in Home Depot or Lowe's or any other grocery store. It's harmless in protests, riots, looting, burning Capitol buildings and all kinds of things. It's only deadly in bars, restaurants, when you're walking in, not when you sit down or when you enjoy your drink. It's not deadly in hair salons. God knows we can't have that happen. It's only deadly on school buses until you get off the school bus. It's only deadly in classrooms because you said it was. I don't have a lot of faith in you people. You guys are, I'll put it another way. Once you bow down, you have to shoot your way up.
Michael, thank you. Next we have Barb Mathers. And there again, for the record, just state your name, Barb.
And I'm using Marie King's time too, so I've got 6 minutes.
Here?
She's
Is she here?
She's sitting right next to me. I don't cheat. Okay. First of all, I agree with everything that's been shared about the masks. I didn't prepare anything on masks tonight. I was going to talk about equity versus equality that we talked about in the May 4th, strategic plan meeting. I wanted to show this image that was used at the beginning of the slideshow that Superintendent Stokes shared with us, demonstrating what equity is versus equality. And we've discussed multiple times in these meetings that there's a school board version of equity and there's a community version of equity, but we still haven't actually gotten a definition of what equity is. If you look at this picture, you guys say a lot of the right things, but you don't do the right things. Equality is saying, as an example that Laurel shared at that meeting, equality is everybody gets shoes, but equity is everybody gets the right pair of shoes, the right size of shoes. And as you can see in the picture, in order to have equity distributed, you're taking away from other students. I understand it to be as the picture on the left is a student who's probably advanced, speaks English, and takes advanced courses, while maybe the student on the right is probably a second language speaker, may not speak English really well. And in order to get the student to be at the same level as the advanced course student, you have to take away the box from the advanced student in order to make the other student be at the same level. Equity is dumbing down the standards. One of the examples that Superintendent Stokes shared is there's only 14% of Hispanic students in advanced chemistry courses. Who cares how many Hispanic students are in advanced chemistry courses? If you guys are taking statistics based on race, that's racist. We don't want racism in our schools. it's also taking away from another student, as I explained. I graduated from Carson High 20 years ago. I had to pay extra money for my advanced course textbooks because there weren't resources for the advanced students. My next younger sister didn't even have advanced chemistry books because she was one of the biggest classes to graduate from Carson High. So she didn't even have a textbook for her advanced chemistry class. But the students who don't speak English have all kinds of extra, and granted, they need to learn English, but it needs to be when they're in kindergarten. The slideshow that we watched with the guidance counselors versus the social workers, the quote that was read in Spanish was from an 8th grade student. If they started school in pre-K, that's 10 years of education that they should have been able to speak English by then. That would have been a perfect example to practice speaking in English. That shouldn't have been in Spanish. I come from Swedish descent. My dad was the first of his siblings to be born in the States, and 4 of my aunts didn't speak any English when they moved here to the States. They ranged from kindergarten to 6th grade, and they were all placed in a kindergarten course to be able to learn English. Within a 2-year period, they were at their respective grade levels because they learned English as a kindergarten level, and then they were able to go into their courses. If you guys are enabling all these parents and translating things into Spanish and not allowing them to learn English, you're continuing the process. My son attended Fremont before I started homeschooling him. Every single paper that comes home is translated into Spanish. It's a waste of resources, and it's a waste of time for someone to be doing that. That time and money needs to be going towards something else and teaching the kids English. They need to learn English. And you shouldn't even be tracking based on any of that. Okay, the other thing I wanted to discuss with equity and equality is all of the, I forgot the word, the job description of the equity director. So some of them are supervise and evaluate the assistant director of equity. I didn't know we had an assistant director, so now we have a regular one and an assistant director. One of her jobs is to oversee the Family Life Advisory Committee. Anything that has to do family should not be in the schools. It's reading, writing, and arithmetic, the basics. Organize and direct multicultural education activities to enhance education and diversity. I only shared maybe like 20 things from her job description. Equity, diversity, and inclusion were listed 19 times. Monitor and evaluate diversity, equity, and inclusion. Plan, organize, and direct operations, personnel, and resources to enhance teacher and administrative understanding of educational practices, again, related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Ability to coordinate the work of a diverse team. Knowledge of state guidelines and requirements and practices, procedures, and techniques used in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then the final paragraph actually is the kicker. Belief that every student has the opportunity to excel. Outcomes for students must not be predictable by race, ethnicity, gender, disability, socioeconomic status, and culture. You guys say the right things, but you're not doing it. That's what you need to be doing. You need to get out.
If I could just say one thing for the audience, not all students that are English language learners come to school in kindergarten. They show up throughout the different grade levels. They may come in 8th grade, they may come in high school, middle school, so they're not all coming to us in kindergarten or 1st grade.
My point was they need to go back to the kindergarten level to learn English. My aunts came in 6th grade and had to go back to kindergarten.
Yeah, I just wanted to let people know that, Barb. Thank you. We have Lee Elliott.
There you are.
Lee, just state your name for the record, please.
Heck, I've lost my name. My name is Lee Elliott. I live here in Carson City, and I'm back. Most of you know that I'm the one.
Would you check to see if your mic's on? We can hear you pretty good, but it may not be on.
You can hear me across the county. Do I start over again? Okay. Most of you know that Michael Morrissey, myself, and a few others, we do protests downtown. We had a big rally up at the mansion on Sunday. And let me tell you, the mood, because of the masks, is tipping to ugly in communities. I know you don't believe that, some of you, but it's a fact. Me and Mike and a few others really work hard to control the tempers and the ugliness of what people want to do to school boards, to boards of supervisors, to anybody that's making the decision about wearing these ungodly masks. Okay? I'm just telling you that we're at a crossroads. And if this tyrannical mandate continues, there's going to be ugly things happening. And I don't want that. I don't want that. Okay, guys? We have been pushing for a peaceful transition from wearing these masks to say, okay, it's my body, my life, and I can do what I want with my body. And forcing kids to hide their smiles from one another, to me, is criminal. It is criminal. You know, I live right behind Borderwick Bray, as some of you know, and I love hearing the kids laugh and scream and play and you know, play their games out there and beat up on each other and get scraped, you know. But I'll tell you something, guys, they're confused. One day they wear a mask, next day they don't wear a mask. One day they wear a mask, they're frightened of everything. And they've got to become kids again. Please, please, please. And I'll continue to control as much as I can some of the people that come to the protests, guys, okay? That's a promise from me and a few others. We don't want ugliness. But if ugliness comes, c'est la vie. God bless you guys and for the work you do, okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience who would like to speak? For your record, state your name, please.
Heather Coe. And my son had to call yesterday, and I find it absolutely amazing that you want to mask up kids, but yet you'll send them to school in hazardous conditions. Just like you say that equity is all about fairness, yet it's the most racist thing that there is. This comes from my son. The other thing is, I don't know how anyone is supposed to believe anyone of you guys, let alone anyone at the school, since I had to call the first day because my son is in a class where the English teacher locks her door and you need to knock quietly 3 times. She has anxiety from mass and the coronavirus. And she has Black Lives Matters posters in her room. I was told by the vice principal that's not true, yet I have a picture of it. So that was a lie. So I would like to know how you expect any child or parent at this point to believe anything that comes out of your mouths. You contradict everything. This is an absolute joke. Mask up kids, send them to school in hazardous, smoky conditions. Tell kids that they're supposed to be kind to one another, everything's about equity, and you teach them how to be racist and about Black Lives Matters while the doors are locked, right? Okay, someone better get everything in order. I know that not everyone voted for this whacked out equity garbage. I know 2 wonderful people didn't, but I know the rest of you did. And I think that every parent should know everyone who voted which way and why their children are not getting educated properly. You don't care that they're not being any extra courses, any extra help for the year that they missed. No one's come up with anything for that yet still, but you're going to teach them about equity, which is critical race theory. And I want someone to explain to me when it's going to be taught, what classes, since now I know it's in English, so that I could take my child out of school when that's happening, because you're not going to teach my child to be a racist. Thank you.
Anybody else in the audience who would like to speak? Karen? I like your coat. Just for the record, Karen, go ahead and state your name.
Karen Stevens. I think I'm back in Alaska. It feels like it.
It's cold.
So I just have a few comments that I'd like to make tonight. Thank you for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm kind of wondering why the following organizations are exempt from the mandatory vaccines: the FDA, the WHO, the CDC, the White House, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and the employees that work at Pfizer. Another interesting fact is that the CEO of Pfizer has not taken the COVID-19 inoculation, AKA vaccine. What does he know that we're not being told? I'd really like to know that, wouldn't you? Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Anybody else in the audience would like to speak? Come on up, the same thing, just state your name for the record, please.
Valerie Burns. First of all, I'd like to say I wish that you would have made it mandatory to have your student body representative here so she could have heard a lot of these comments, taken them back to our fellow students. If she or any of your students in this county believe that this is normal, that having a school dance, probably with masks, or having to be vaccinated, or having to be tested, or all the sports with the same restrictions is normal, then she needs to be further educated. This is far from normal. I got a question. Before the government mandated this, did any of you ever think to put on a mask? Did it ever cross your mind to put that muzzle on your face? Probably not, because you were brainwashed by the government. And if you think for one moment that that cheap piece of cloth is going to save you from anything, then you all need to have your heads examined. Second of all, I'd like to say that this COVID testing and critical race theory and vaccine, you are the cause of division. This country is not divided. The people that think like you are dividing it more. And that's all I've got to say.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience would like to come up and speak? Just, again, for the record, state your name, please.
Hi, my name is Charlotte Stewart, and this last week I had a kind of interesting conversation with a doctor from Stotland Medical, and I was talking to him about being afraid that they were going to mandate the vaccines at the colleges. And he said that there is no way legally that they can do that, that they have to offer exemptions, not to take it. It's definitely poison. And he said if they try to have you take tests in lieu of getting the vaccine because you will not get vaccinated, be aware that the liquid on those tests on the cotton balls is ethylene oxide. That is a carcinogenic. It's going to cause people a lot of problems, especially the ones that are being made to take these tests weekly or bi-weekly because they don't want to get some poison they have no idea what it is put in their body. So I just wanted to make you guys aware of that because it's going to turn out real bad.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience? Okay, I know we have some online, but I would like to say one other thing just to clarify. So everybody in the audience knows that the school district, school board, we're not mandating vaccines at all. We don't have that authority. We don't want to do it, and we're not doing it. All right, thank you. Right now, we're going to close public comment and we'll go online comment.
Are you doing testing, she asked?
Well, yes, I think everybody knows the athletes are being tested and certain people are being tested, yes. Thank you. Okay, if there's nobody else, we're going to go ahead and close public comment now and we'll go to any comment that may be online.
Thank you, Mr. Varner. This comment is from Mr. Jason Tingle. He's the father of 4 in the Carson City School District. He extends his apologies for not being able to be here in person and provide comment. But he wishes, I really wish I could have been there tonight, but obviously was not able to make it. I want to personally thank every member of the school board for making the right decision with regards to face masks. I feel in my heart that it was the right choice to give the parents the choice for their children's well-being and not the school or the government. I know that the board puts up with a lot of grief, so I just wanted to thank each and every one of you. I hope this makes it in time for comment at one point or another for the record. Again, thank you for all your hard work, and he will continue to support the school district and the school board.
Thank you, Jason.
This comment was provided from a concerned parent and citizen. I've sat quietly watching school board meetings from my home, and I've been shocked by the childish and downright mean comments of so many public commenters, including threats of knowing where board members live. Not only is this behavior completely unacceptable, as a community, we can do better than this. Many of the public commenters don't even have children in the school district. While everyone is entitled to their own opinions, it's a waste of time to share the same opinions. Notice I say opinions and not facts, because you know as well as I do that the American Frontline Doctors are a political organization, not a group of doctors that are credible with information regarding COVID-19, and start focusing on facts and listening to experts in the field. I understand that there is a real and valid fear among you of what these angry public commenters can and will do. But it's time to stop browbeating down to them and start worrying about our children. I have a high school friend from a nearby high school that contracted COVID on the first day of school. Less than a week later, she ended up in the PICU over a week. Her district chose no masks. This is not the only story like this. PICUs across the country are filling up, and if they're full, what happens to a child that needs a chemo treatment, but there aren't enough beds or physicians to care for them? Our local hospital beds are full. Masks may be an inconvenience, but they're a small price to pay to keep your child safe and schools open. My son said that at school, most of his friends were wearing masks. We asked them why they did it since they aren't required. He figured that their parents made them. They told him no, it was because they didn't want to catch the Delta variant and they're too young to be vaccinated. The children understand this. They would rather be uncomfortable in a mask than uncomfortable lying on their stomachs in the hospital trying to avoid being intubated. They would rather wear masks than deal with the effects of long COVID. They would rather be in mask than doing distance learning again because of an outbreak. They'd rather be wearing a mask than be the reason for a dear friend or
We
loved
got 3
one
minutes, I'm sorry.
would get
We'll
sick.
put it on the record.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Varner. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. All right, public comment is closed. We're going to move on to agenda item number 9. It's a presentation of the civics test results for the Carson City School District of 2021. And this is for discussion only, and it's Brittany Witter. For the record, just state your name, please.
Vice President Varner, Mr. Stokes, members of the board, thank you for having me tonight. My name is Cheryl Macy, and I am the Director of Equity in Curriculum and Instruction. And do you?
I apologize for, there was a different name on the agenda here, so I apologize.
Yes. Brittany Witter is our social studies curriculum coordinator, and she really wanted to be here tonight to present, but she's also the volleyball coach, and tonight was their first game, so she's with her team tonight. And I'm just going to get this playing here. So I'm going to be speaking tonight about SB 322. Senate Bill 322, passed in the 79th Nevada legislative session, states that a pupil in any public high school must take an examination as condition for graduation, containing a number of questions determined by the district which are identical to the civics portion of the naturalization test adopted by the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services of the Department of Homeland Security, effective July 1st, 2019. So I know that Mrs. Cortez will be posting the slideshow with the minutes, and the legislation is linked here. And I did want to point out that although we were supposed to roll this out in the year 2019-20, the state gave all districts an exemption because we shut down schools in the last couple months of the year. So we weren't able to test. SB 322 requires for students to graduate that they must take the exam. The graduation requirement is specific to participation only. The state requires that the test be a direct match, the questions be a direct match to the U.S. naturalization civics test. And students may receive a waiver for special circumstances, for example, if their IEP states that they should not be taking the exam. Just a little bit about the U.S. naturalization test. It's actually broken up into 2 portions. There's an English portion on speaking, reading, and writing, and then there's a civics portion that's multiple choice. It's that civics portion that we pull questions from, not the English portion. This is what the Nevada Department of Education requires of districts. We have to determine the course in which the examination will be administered, and a logical place for that, of course, was our government semester-long course. We have to choose a number of questions, no fewer than 50. We chose 50. We have to decide on what we consider to be a passing score. We chose 60%, as that is concordant with the naturalization test. And we have to decide how much that assessment is going to be weighted in a student's grades. Our district decided that the teachers actually decided they wanted it to be a part of their final, and it ended up being weighted as 10% of their summative course grade. And then the Department of Ed also requires that we report aggregated results to the Board of Trustees, which is why I'm here tonight. Our process, of course, we do teach the content of the civics test and government courses. We also provided students with a study guide prior to taking the assessment. They took the test, and then students also had the option to retake the test if necessary for a second time. A challenge that we faced this year was getting our online students to complete the assessment. But with the help of Jill Council at Pioneer and Kim Cooley at Carson High School, we were able to get most of those students through the test. We figured you'd want to know what kind of questions are on the test. So here's a couple sample questions. The first one, I'm just going to read it because I know not everybody can see the screen. Which concept stops one branch of government from becoming too powerful? That's separation of powers. And how many amendments does the Constitution have? And the answer is 27. So let's look at our data. We had 544 total seniors. 461 completed the assessment, which gave us an 84% participation rate. We had a lot more waivers given than usual. We had students who weren't able to come into school or students who were quarantined that added extra challenges. We hope this number will be higher this year. We're shooting for 100%. So what we want to do for this year is develop a protocol that works out some of the logistics of how we're doing this to ensure that we are capturing as many students as we can. And we are also encouraging teachers to give the assessment at the beginning of the semester as a pre-assessment so that teachers can set goals around that, students can set goals around that. And then if something happens and a student's quarantined at the end of the semester, if anything, we already have participation from that particular student. Here's our passing rates. And for those who don't know, IEP stands for Individual Education Plan. That's the plan that is given to students who are enrolled in special education. FRL is free and reduced lunch, and ELL is English language learner. And I'll give you just a minute to look over those pass rates. Final thoughts. We are developing an accepted practice, as I already mentioned. We're also developing a Spanish version, which is in adherence to SB 322. They do give us that option for newcomers. Overall, we believe that we had positive results, we had strong participation, and we're looking forward to sharing how well our students do next year. And as our debate students say, I'm now open for questions and further points of clarification.
Any board questions? Stacy, you have anything?
Just to rectify everything, we do teach the Constitution in our government class, correct?
Yes, it is the foundation for that course.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dawn?
Thank you.
Lupe? Laurel?
Not for you, but that the legislative session gave the district local control by saying the number of questions determined by the district, and then took away that control by saying which are identical to the civics portion.
Right.
So this test is very much specific to the legislation that was passed, and all the test questions, everything that is in there, we're following that. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have no questions, but just thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
And we'll go ahead and move on to the next agenda item, which is item number 10, adoption of the Carson City School District test procedures and security plan for the 2021-2022 school year as required by NRS 390275. This is for possible action.
Good evening, members of the board. Thank you for having me.
Could you state?
Good evening, school board, and thank you for having me. For the record, I'm Ricky Medina, the Director of Accountability and Assessment for the Carson City School District. And tonight I'm going to talk about kind of our test security procedures. So kind of the long story short, every year before September 1st, we have to present to you our test security plan and get your blessing. And so we do this every year. This past year, nothing has changed in the plan except for the dates. The one thing that could possibly change this year, the state has put us on notice that there's a potential that the end of course assessments that we used to give at the end of algebra and English 1, that those tests could potentially come back this year. In not the last legislative session, but the session before that, those assessments were defunded, but they didn't take them out as being a requirement. Right now, the state doesn't have money to pay for those assessments, but they said they're looking to try to find resources somewhere. And if they find the resources, we'll have to give those assessments. A couple of kind of highlights kind of worth mentioning from the plan, because these are the two of the things that I think come up kind of more often than anything else. The first one is that all students that are enrolled in public schools, including charter schools, at a grade level where it's mandated to test statewide, must participate. And once we get closer to testing season, folks ask if there's options to opt out. And the federal government, as well as the state government, don't provide an opportunity for that to happen. And it's for a very good reason. What used to happen in assessment is when you had to give a state or federal assessment and you knew that you had to give a state or federal assessment, all of a sudden a school bus would show up in front of the school, and that was the day to have a field trip, but only for certain kids that you knew weren't going to do well on the test. And so because folks did that, that's why they put in the requirements that everybody is required to test. There's like a 5% cushion. So 5% of our kids don't have to test. And that's 5%, not just of the overall population, but of the individual sub-pops, like the different ethnicity groups, our special ed students, our FRL students. And that 5% is like for like super duper extenuating circumstances. Like the kid gets in a car wreck 2 weeks before they have to take the exam and they're in the hospital, something of that nature. So that's kind of the first thing that comes up every year. The second thing in the plan is that students cannot have phones or smartwatches or any smart technology when they're taking the assessment. And this is one that it always pops up, especially for like things like the ACT exam that students have to take to graduate. And the reason why this is in there is, one, it's possible for students to cheat using that smart technology. It's also possible for them to take pictures. And because there's so few test items like available through the state, if somebody were to take a picture of the exam and that got out, that could be like detrimental to everything. And the way that this happens is usually, for the most part, kids aren't cheating when they have their smartphones. Usually they complete their test. They might even turn their test in, but then their phone goes off, or they text somebody to tell them that they just finished with the test, and that becomes a test irregularity. And that means that, one, that they might face some disciplinary action, but it's also going to mean that their test score is not going to count. And so that if you're taking the ACT and you do really well, and at the end of the test you decide to text mom to say you did great, that score might not count. I mentioned these two kind of test irregularities. There are others that happen, but for the most part, there are things where like people make like simple mistakes. Like instead of giving part 1 of the test first, they give part 2 of the test, like on accident. Or we have 2 kids that have the same name. They give the kid, they switch the names on the test. And then at the end, we have to switch those back. All of the test irregularities, they're first investigated by the site, the test coordinator. If they find any irregularities, if anybody doesn't follow our plan, they're kind of the vice principal is the first person that kind of has to do their research and see what happens. Then that also falls on the district. I have to go out and kind of investigate, see what the irregularity was, see if we need to disqualify test scores or whatever. And then at the end, it's reviewed by the Nevada Department of Ed. So if there's anything in our plan that we don't follow, there's kind of 3 levels of review for it. The plan that you all have, basically the way that it works is the Nevada Department of Ed provides us with their test security plan and says, this is what we want you to do. This is the training that we want you to provide. The district takes that plan. We kind of make it our own. We all add some additional kind of training examples, like irregularities that we've seen in the past. I'll make sure that the vice principals like really stress those at their sites. And then the vice principal kind of submits their plan that goes along with the state and district plan that kind of gets into the more specifics, like where are they going to lock up their assessments? What exactly are they going to do when an irregularity happens? And with that, you all have the plan. It hasn't changed much. Do you all have any questions?
Dawn, you have any questions? Stacy's shaking her head no, so. Lupe? I just have one question. Homeschooled children, they can take the assessment, but they're not required to, is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. They have to let us know in advance so that way we can make sure that we can get them into the system and that we have room to accommodate them. Even though that's available, it's not taken care of or taken advantage of too often, except for, say, like the ACT exam. There are sometimes homeschooled students will show up for that. The other assessments, they're more than welcome, but they often don't.
And then is there any data on how many test irregularities there are in a certain year?
Yeah, I could get that information for you. I would separate them into kind of 2 types of irregularities. There's kind of like minor irregularities, like the 2 kids getting their tests mixed up. There's always several cell phone kind of issues. And I would say that those are kind of at the minor level. In the time that I've been here, there's only been like one major one where it was possible that the teacher kind of allowed some cheating to take place, but there wasn't enough evidence to support that. But in my time being here, I can only recall one incidence of that happening.
Okay, thank you. This is an action item. Oh, go ahead, Don.
I'll make a motion. I move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees adopt the Carson City School District Test Procedures and Test Security Plan for the 2021-2022 school year as submitted in accordance with NRS 390.275.
Do we have a second? Second by Stacy. Is there any board discussion? No board discussion. Any public comment or discussion for this action item? Seeing none.
No, Mr. Varner, no public comment.
Seeing none, then I'll go ahead and call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Medina.
Thank you for your time.
Now we're going to move on to item number 11, and this is also for possible action. It's a discussion and possible action on a resolution designated as the 2021 school bond resolution, declaring the necessity of incurring I'm going to put my glasses on real quick. A lot better. Declaring the necessity of incoming a bonded indebtedness on behalf of the Carson City School District for the purpose of acquiring, constructing, improving, and equipping school facilities of the district. Authorizing the issuance of the Carson City School District, Nevada General Obligation, Limited Tax School Improvement Bonds, Series 2021, in the aggregate principal amount not to exceed $12 million, providing the terms, conditions, and form of the bonds, and providing the effective date. And like I said, this is for possible action. We have Mr. A.J. Fielding. For the record, state your name.
Thank you, Vice President Varner. Andrew Fueling for the record. Tonight, I bring to you something that has we talked about quite a bit over the last months. What you have tonight is a resolution to authorize the sale of a bond in the amount of no more than $12 million for general obligation school improvement bonds. As you know, in 2010, the voters of Carson City approved a rollover bond question. That question at the same time reduced the debt service property tax that the school is levied for the school district from 47 to 43 cents. That authorization is good through 2035. What we are looking to do then is issue these bonds. It would be 20-year bonds. We'll be doing this with we would be doing this with the assistance of Mr. Marty Johnson, who was here a number of weeks ago. Our debt service revenues easily will cover the principal and interest payments on this bond. As you know, we have one very significant project, the expansion at Eagle Valley Middle School, that we'll be using the large portion of these funds to assist in completing. As Mr. Wallace attested to, it's slowly becoming amazing, and it will be even amazinger very soon.
Is that a word?
Otherwise, there's still the discussion about the 1600 Snyder Avenue property, and whichever way that goes, if the board would eventually decide not to do that, other major maintenance projects, heating and air conditioning, roofing, pavement, just efficiency projects around the district, safety projects, there are plenty of things that we could otherwise spend these funds on. So regardless, it'll be put to good use for the district and the community. So I bring that for your consideration to approve the resolution if there are no questions.
Stacy?
So you said, so how much of this is going to Eagle Valley?
So for sure, about 6 million, a little more than 6 million. I would expect, just with what cost increases have been, that it'd be closer to 7, but not for sure. So really, I guess in terms of that, if you think about half of it going to Eagle Valley and then half of it to these other projects, I think it's a good way to think about it.
And people can find out what those other projects are by looking at our capital projects list.
Absolutely. Yeah. And truly, the other side of that is we'll be coming up over the next months, our bond oversight committee, to some extent, will transfer over to the facilities master planning committee. And so that kind of further will define once we get into, I mean, as of right now, the big project on the capital improvement plan is that Snyder purchase and renovation. And there are many other smaller projects on there, but they haven't been at this point defined as being funded by that bond. But that's once we go through the amended budget process, that is a natural kind of change that happens. That's always under review. So.
And the push is mainly because of the construction costs have just skyrocketed since we just got the plans and got the approval and estimates and stuff from Eagle Valley's construction.
Correct. So the initial projections done on Eagle Valley on what the cost would be was almost 4 years ago. And as you know, that industry, the materials costs and just with all the other things going on in the world have just exploded. So that has become a real problem for us.
Don?
Yeah, I think the $12 million is reasonable. And I think it's good that we keep the money if the board wishes eventually to buy that Snyder property.
Lupe?
I would concur with that. I mean, if we come to the conclusion that buying the property is going to be more beneficial to the district, that would be the way to go.
Thank you. Laurel?
Are you ready to entertain a motion?
I'm ready to entertain the motion.
I move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees approve the 2021 school bond resolution as submitted, declaring the necessity of incurring a bonded indebtedness for the purpose of acquiring, constructing, improving, and equipping school facilities of the district, authorizing the superintendent to arrange for the sale of general obligation limited tax school improvement bonds, Series 2021, in an amount not to exceed $12 million.
A motion by Laurel Crossman. Do we have a second? Second by Don Creany. Is there any board discussion about the motion? Is there any public comment or discussion about the motion? Seeing none, I'll entertain the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 12. The annual review of CCSD Policy and Regulation 543, Safe and Respectful Learning Environment, Free from Bullying or Cyberbullying, for which no changes are proposed per NRS 388134, to include an outline of safe voice, anonymous reporting system used to report threats to the safety and well-being of students. And this is for discussion only. We have Ms. Tasha Fusing.
Thank you, Vice President Varder. Tasha Fuson for the record. Good evening, members of the board. So NRS, as you stated, the 388.134 requires the Board of Trustees for each district to annually review policies adopted for the provision of a safe and respectful learning environment. In our district, that refers to Policy and Regulation 543. Tonight's discussion will serve as the annual review for our district. In addition, I will provide a brief overview of Safe Voice. Safe Voice is an anonymous reporting system used to report threats to the safety or well-being of students. So I'd like to take a look first at the policy. I believe you have that in front of you in your packets. For policy, as this policy, as with all policies, it pretty much starts with a belief statement from the board. So I'm going to go ahead and read that. In accordance with NRS 388.121 to 388.145, the Carson City School District strives to provide a learning environment that is safe and respectful, in which persons of differing beliefs, races, colors, national origins, ancestries, religions, diverse gender identities or expressions, sexual orientations, physical or mental disability, sexes, or any other distinguishing characteristic and background can realize their full academic and personal potential. The Board of Trustees of the district declares that any form of bullying or cyberbullying is prohibited and will not be tolerated. This policy further goes on to state that no member of the board, employee of the district, or member of a club or organization which uses district or school facilities, regardless of whether the club or organization has any connection to the district or school, shall tolerate or engage in bullying or cyberbullying anywhere on district property, a school campus, on school transportation, or at school activities. So I think it's important for our community to note that we do apply that expectation to, again, to after-school activities, or if our school, for instance, Carson High School, will hold an event off campus in the evening, those same expectations exist. It exists if it's an outside organization utilizing our facilities. So we do address all incidences of bullying or cyberbullying that happens in and around our properties or within our organizations that our schools are supporting, or activities which they are putting together. So it further states that, as you can read, but we do have to provide for the training of members of the Board of Trustees, administrators, teachers, and all other personnel of the district on the elements of bullying and cyberbullying, effective methods of intervention and remediation for bullying or cyberbullying, strategies to build positive school culture, rights and needs of special populations, and available community resources. Further states that we have to disseminate information concerning the need for a safe and respectful and learning environment free from bullying and cyberbullying. And lastly, that we must outline the requirements of reporting violations of NRS. So This policy then, of course, directs the superintendent to develop, or the superintendent's designee to develop a regulation. Before we go into the regulation, are there any questions or comments on the policy itself?
Just to clarify, there are no changes from the policy this year.
Correct.
Stacy, do you have a question? Don? Lupe?
Okay. Then in taking a look at our regulation 543, I just figure we'll kind of do a walkthrough of this at a high level because there are no, again, suggested changes. But A on this is a definition, a legal definition of what bullying means. I won't read that to you. You can read that. Letter B is a definition of cyberbullying. Letter C talks about the education and training. As you can see, this outlines, or this regulation just goes more in detail than what the policy states. So the one thing I do want to state for the training, because I thought you would be interested, is that we have provided myriad trainings throughout the past few years for our staff. For instance, Safe Talk. Our school social workers, counselors, and nurses receive that training, and administrators. In Safe Talk, participants learn to notice and respond to situations where suicide thoughts may be present, recognize that invitations for help are often overlooked, move beyond common tendency to miss, dismiss, and avoid suicide, apply the TALK steps, so that's tell, ask, listen, and keep safe, and know community resources. So we trained those groups of workers in Safe Talk. We also provided protected class sensitivity and diversity training to all certified and classified staff. We do provide signs of suicide training to staff at all sites and secondary students. And then every year we have training in mandatory reporting, another training called You Can Protect Our Children. We train in students in transition, bullying and cyberbullying, snapshots of dyslexia, suicide prevention. So those are all done in our e-learning suite that we send out in the fall and in the spring. In addition, all of our schools coordinate Week of Respect activities for their sites. The Week of Respect is always the first week in October, so that's coming up for our schools real soon. And in the Week of Respect, what the schools do is they put together activities to teach students about methods to prevent, identify, and report incidents of bullying and cyberbullying, methods to facilitate positive human relations among students, and methods to facilitate positive human relationships among students by eliminating bullying and cyberbullying. For families, if they're interested, we do provide informational pamphlets on resolving incidents of bullying and cyberbullying at our schools in both English and in Spanish. And then specifically for our administrators, we do have monthly community of practice meetings. And within those COP meetings, we have developed a cyberbullying manual for administrators. So this goes specifically into the steps that administrators must take to investigate and report and resolve issues of bullying. And then we also work on developing restorative practices. So that is the training and education that we're providing to our students and staff at this point in time. So in moving on to D specifically, again, governs the reporting, confidentiality, investigation, notification, interview process, timeline for investigations, written reports, follow-up that must be done, actions that must be taken by administrators, potential discipline that may be administered or given to students, and then exceptions and record keeping. So again, what that really boils down to for our staff, because that's more about directing the work of our disciplinarians within the schools, is really the coordination and the development of this manual for them. So we've developed so that there's continuity amongst our schools. We've developed processes and forms that are used to help our school administrators make sure that they're meeting the requirements in our regulation, and also, obviously NRS. Any questions or concerns about the regulation?
Stacy?
Not about the regulations and stuff, but how is Safe Voice working? have the calls increased?
I don't know that we have specific data on numbers of calls. I can tell you that Mr. Stokes and myself are included on all safe voice reports that are made in the district. So just from a personal perspective, we really have not seen an increase in safe voice reports. We do get them on occasion. I know many schools, when it first came out, some schools struggled with being inundated, if you will, by reports, some false reports, et cetera. We're very fortunate in our community. I think our parents and our students take it very seriously. So that has not been a concern for our site staff and being able to keep up with it. We have a wonderful partnership with the Sheriff's Department, so we work very closely with them on responding to some of the reports. And then our school social workers also work within the region to cover like summer calls. So I think we've really got a good process in place for our families. And it's helpful. In our cases, we do develop really good relationships with families. So a lot of times, students are reporting and parents are reporting not utilizing Safe Voice. They just come directly to the school sites and report to school administration. But when families or students are not feeling comfortable coming directly to the school, then they can do it anonymously through Safe Voice. So it does give that extra added ability to do that. Again, I can't give you very hard data. I apologize, but I can tell you last year, I don't know, Mr. Stokes, I think probably I can count maybe for sure single digits that came across my desk.
And I can add just a little bit to that because last year was so unique. We didn't have the same volume of calls as we had the year before. And oftentimes, the Safe Voice call is generally student to student. Sometimes it's student or adult to student. And so as we received those calls and as we had a chance to work through the details, 2 years ago, the volume was much different than it was just last year based on the fact that we were on a hybrid schedule.
I think our training and stuff is working because I looked at the data on Nevada Report Card, and our numbers have consistently gone down in the last 3 years that we have data. So kudos to you guys for all that you do to train the staff and open that up to let people know that it's okay to report it too. So thank you.
Absolutely. I can tell you, again, just from an anecdotal perspective, I've been very intrigued to see the type of reports that folks make on Safe Voice. And I mean that in an open and interested way, because our families have used it not to simply focus on bullying and cyberbullying. We've had reports, for instance, of a parent who maybe through a conversation with their child has realized that another child doesn't seem to be bringing lunch to school, and there's a concern, or certain things like that. So I think in that case, it's been a very positive tool again, because in each case that a report is made, site administration as well as school counselors and school social workers are tasked with reviewing those incident reports when they come in. The system works very well. So again, from my personal perspective, what occurs is I get an email that says a report was made to trigger me to go in and to look. And so I go in and I look and I make sure that the sites are going in and addressing it. And when our sites investigate a report that's made through Safe Voice, then they actually put a resolution in the system so you can see that it's been addressed. You can see how it's been addressed. And again, it's always being monitored. So even if a report is made in the middle of the night or on a Saturday or Sunday, there is someone who's monitoring that and checking those reports. So it's not something that has to wait until school hours.
Dawn?
Okay.
I just have one quick question. On the 2-day limit that you have for investigating issues of bullying, and yeah, I know there's a provision in there for 1 extra day, but generally, can that be completed that timely, that investigation?
It can, but I will tell you, it is extra added stress on our school staffs when it comes to specifically our vice principals in the elementary and typically our deans in the secondary schools. This takes precedence over everything. So when a report of bullying or cyberbullying comes in, whatever else is on their agenda for that day gets dropped and this gets addressed. So sometimes that means, that classroom referral that a teacher made for, I don't know, a student, getting out of line in class might not be addressed in as timely manner as it would be normally because this has to take precedence. So it does, and our site administrators are very well aware of that. And it is very timely. Bullying investigations are really time intensive because you have to, of course, interview the alleged victim, the alleged aggressor, as well as any and all potential witnesses. You have to get statements. I mean, it is very, very time intensive. And then, of course, reporting to the parents and to the families what's going on. And, of course, we have the timelines to adhere to. Luckily, our families are really, have worked really well with us. So we haven't had a problem, for instance, with being able to communicate to families to say, here's where we're at in our investigation. We would like to have this additional day. That's not really been a problem that's been reported to me. But it is very, very time intensive. And I think sometimes when you look at the increase in administrative staff, per se, people might say, well, why 10 years ago we didn't have that many deans at the high school, for instance, right, or at the middle school. What's different now? Well, here's a prime example of what's different now, right? We didn't investigate these things like we do now. And so it just takes manpower.
Laurel?
A quick comment. That was one of the things I was going to ask is that do we have enough staff? Because I remember a few years ago when it seemed like the legislature was changing the bullying statute and requirements every time they met. And that seemed to be a real strain on our staff. And I think we added a couple additional dean positions to help. Or is our staff, and I'm guessing last year isn't the best example of it, but do we have enough staff to handle this? Are they able to keep up with everything this way?
So I think it would depend on whose opinion you were asking on that one. The nice thing for Eagle Valley is they do have a dean of students for the first time because of the balancing of the two schools. But that means Carson Middle lost their second dean, and the second dean was moved over to Eagle Valley. So both middle schools have a principal, vice principal, and a dean of students. Carson High School has 2 dean of students, but they also have 2,300 students. So I'm not sure that 2 dean of students necessarily is enough to really address it as well as we would want to. What it means is that your other administrators are picking up a lot of the other duties. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. That's a hard question to answer because we can always do things better. And if we had more staff, we could do them, be a little bit more timely, maybe do things a little bit more thoroughly. And I'm not talking about bullying because this takes precedence over all. I mean, maybe making additional attendance phone calls, maybe, doing those types of things. I do always feel bad for our deans because since our administrators, we do have them supervise and evaluate teachers. We usually give them only a few because it's a entry-level administrative position. So you might give a dean of students maybe 5 or 6 teachers where your vice principal and principal might have 28. You know what I mean? But still, they'll have, observations set up and this hits, and then they have to reach out to the teacher and say, I'm sorry, I know I meant to be coming in and observing you, but I have to put that on the back burner to do this. So it is what it is. We make do with the resources that we have, but extra help is always helpful.
Don, go ahead.
Just thought of something. I've talked to some of the principals, and that is a concern about the time, as far as the time-consuming function here. And I was concerned if we're seeing increases in the cyberbullying, especially.
I think what we're seeing, believe it or not, as Trustee Wilkie said, we're actually seeing slight declines in some ways, and that's because when, as Trustee Crossman said, there were so many changes constantly. Part of what we do as educators is we have to teach kids the difference between someone just being mean and somebody bullying, right? And that became a very unclear line for a while. Original definition of bullying was that it had to be pervasive recurring, and or really so intense that there was no question. But the law kind of changed along the way to make it a little bit more, no, it doesn't have to necessarily be like pervasive, et cetera. So that became okay, how do we teach the kids the difference between this is bullying because somebody's intending to make you feel bad on a continual basis, right? Versus, especially in a middle school environment, sometimes it's more difficult. Someone gave you a dirty look who actually might have been giving the person behind you a dirty look and it not being you, but you perceived it, and so doing investigations like that. So I think as time has passed, we've been able to do some training with students, so that has helped. And then also with social and emotional learning and the tenets that we teach kids with problem solving and how to get along and how to ask for support and help from their counselors or social workers, we're able to help our students work through some of those. And I think we've been able to teach kids some coping skills when it comes to, well, what do I do when I encounter this? So all those things have been very positive, but they, again, are time intensive. So especially as restorative practices, you've heard a lot about that versus suspensions. That's another thing that takes a lot more time on behalf of our school administrators to actually write restorative plans for behavior versus you're suspended for 3 days. It's the right thing to do because we want to teach appropriate behavior and appropriate replacement behaviors. We do know that suspensions are ineffective. Sitting a kid home, especially when you have parents at work and the kid's then sitting at home by themselves watching TV, doing whatever, in some cases, right, is not necessarily the most effective thing. We do know, I can tell you from being a professional, kids hate more than anything is sitting in school suspension, right? Or you take them out of the classroom and say, no, but you're going to come to school still, and you're going to sit in this room and you're going to do. So, just finding other ways to work with kids and reteach positive behaviors or positive replacement behaviors. But again, time intensive. So as we continue to build our skills around that, we have continued to build some staffing. And again, that's a reason why we have social workers through state legislation action is to help us to address some of those issues. But I don't know, it's ever evolving. One thing I do want to do this evening is I just wanted to show you on our school website where families can find Safe Voice and information about Safe Voice. So it is on our website in many, many places. But first off, this is just our front page. So Safe Voices here. You can click on that, and I'll show you what that looks like when you get there, but I wanted to show you how many other places it is. It's on each one of our dashboards. So if you go into each of these dashboards, they're that same icon. In addition to that, if you went up here to Parents, this is actually what I wanted to show you. We have our webpage called How to Be and Stay Safe. We specifically titled it How to Be and Stay Safe, and it's also on the Student tab too, because not everyone knows what Safe Voice is. So we said, okay, we have it listed as Safe Voice, but we also need to have it listed somewhere else that might trigger someone to go, oh, okay, I'm going to look there for information. So this is our How to Be and Stay Safe page, which gives you information about bullying and cyberbullying, what it is, what the definition is, et cetera. And then this also has the Safe Voice button. When you go to Safe Voice, it actually has right here, this. I'm not going to play it for you, but this, if you clicked on it, and it's taken a while to load, but that's an actual video tutorial on how to make a report. So it's not just, here you go, here it is, and here's all this, everything in writing. You can actually click on that and see a video of how to fill out the report. They're quite simple. That's the feedback we get from parents and students. It's not a difficult process, but there is several resources to show our community members how to use that. Any other questions that you might have for me around Safe Voice?
No, I'm seeing none, so I'd just like to thank you for the presentation. I thought it was a good presentation, a lot of good information, so thank you.
Thank you.
Now we'll move on to the next item, number 13, discussion on proposed changes to CCSD policy 303, Superintendent of Schools. And this is the first reading, and it is for discussion only. And we have Mr. Stokes.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President, members of the board. For the record, Richard Stokes. We are reviewing item number 13, which is proposed changes to Board Policy 303. At our last school board meeting, this document was brought to the board for some review and discussion. And from that review and discussion, there were only a few changes made. One is represented by restating the reference to the school board of trustees. There was some existing language, and to try and bring this particular policy up to date with other policies that have been modified recently, we tried to follow the naming convention that has been used so far. And then the only other change was in item number 5, where we inserted the strategic plan as part of the expectations of any superintendent to carry out the decisions, actions, and policies of the board. So there's not a lot of recommended changes. This particular document is in its first reading only, which indicates there's still one more time when this document will be available to the board for formal action and changes. Are there any questions?
Go ahead.
I don't have any questions. I like the changes that are made. I just noticed something though. We've got the Board of Trustees capitalized, Assistant Superintendent and Directors capitalized, and it seems to me for consistency, we'd want to capitalize Chief Executive Officer when we use that term, since that is a title, right? I mean, superintendent, or is that not a title? It just seems like if we're saying Associate Superintendent in capitalization, the superintendent position should also be, I don't know, maybe it's not a.
Well, I think for what it's worth, when we refer to the superintendent or the associate superintendent, we're referring to actual individuals. The chief executive officer is more a title or a description of duties saying that the superintendent will be serving in that role.
Stacy, I'm looking at you. Do you have a question? Don? Lupe?
Does the word serve need to be capitalized?
That's what throws you off because it's a heading. And so sometimes when you do headings, you capitalize the verbs and the things, which is why I want to capitalize Chief Executive Officer in that heading. But then it makes me think we need to capitalize it in the next sentence too. But if we're not going to capitalize it, then we would lowercase serve, I think. I'm looking at two English teachers.
Any suggestions?
As long as you have consistent use, you're okay.
I agree. Let's lowercase the serve since we're doing sentences and we're not doing it.
I just had a thought, but I don't know. I know that it's included here, you manage and present a budget. But I wonder for the new superintendent, if we want to put something in there that they advocate for increased funding, maybe at the legislature, something like that, because I think that's what's going to have to happen for the next several sessions, if not continuing sessions of the legislature. And I would just like to see that be a duty of the superintendent.
Mr. Vice President, do you want to limit it to only budgetary discussions, or do you want to increase the verbiage to include all educationally related conditions?
I like
the
that, yeah.
legislature?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I do, but I also don't want it to be where that takes away the primary duties. So I'm thinking of that. How do we use it? But how do we say? Because I think that's what you do in the role is they advocate, but clearly, district what's happening that day in the district takes priority of going.
I think that verbiage would be better used in like the superintendent's goals more than it would be in their actual position requirements.
That may be an expectation, but maybe not an assigned responsibility.
Whatever the desire of the board is.
Yeah, you put it in the strategic plan.
Yeah.
Thank you from the peanut gallery.
Thank you. Any
Maybe
other
just-
ideas?
Maybe just for the record, it was stated that, that what?
Tasha Fuson from the back row stated that we could tie advocating to the strategic plan.
There you go.
I don't see any more questions. This will be the last draft of this that comes before the board, so if there's any changes at all you guys want to make, suggest, now's the time.
You do actually have one more meeting
Do
to
we?
make recommendations, and then it can,
Okay.
the final motion can be to include any changes.
Okay, so we have one more then. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Stokes. Okay, we're down to item number 14, approval of the consent agenda.
I move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Second.
We have a motion by Stacy, a second by Lupe. Any board discussion? Any discussion from the public? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposition, say no. Nay, sorry. Seeing none, the motion carries. Let me change the page here. I wonder if I missed something here. Okay, just item number 15 for informational items. For discussion only, no action will be taken. Let's see here. It lists the activities and events of upcoming. I think everybody has it in front of them. I don't know if I need to read them. And then the next, we'll move on to item number 16, which is request for future agenda topics.
I wrote this down because usually later in the night I forget. So I think a future agenda topic should be whether or not to hire a third party to help with the superintendent search.
Any other suggestions for agenda items? I have none either, but I agree with you. Now we're down to item number 17. This is adjournment at 9:24. Thank you, guys. Kevin, thank you for staying throughout the meeting. Am I the last one? That was.